Visitors to present-day College Station might find it challenging to visualize the energy-filled community's humble roots. A tiny village that began around a train station delivering students to a small college now stands as one of the nation's most dynamic and rapidly growing cities. When College Station was officially incorporated as a city in the late 1930s, the vast majority of its 2,000 residents were associated with the Agricultural and Mechanical College of Texas. Less than a century later, its 125,000-plus residents work in a wide variety of businesses, industries, and other endeavors, although the university remains the center point. Texas A&M University today boasts more than 65,000 students on the flagship campus, making it one of the nation's largest and most diverse educational institutions. So how did this sleepy town become the thriving young metropolis it is today? The Brazos Valley was largely uninhabited before the 1800s. Native Americans from the Wichita, Tawakoni, Waco, and Tonkawa tribes set up camp for their nomadic lifestyles, but none established permanent residence. It wasn't until colonists arrived in 1821 with Stephen F. Austin that the Brazos Valley got its first actual inhabitants. Still, it took another decade for the area we now know as College Station to receive its first permanent resident. Richard Carter reached Texas with his family in 1831. He had received a league of land from the Mexican government, encompassing much of what is now College Station today, and erected his home just 2 miles east of the present-day Texas A&M campus. The state legislature established the college in 1871, but it took another 5 years for construction to be completed on the first building, Old Main. Finally, in 1876, the school opened its doors to its first class of 106 students. Students were required to participate in military training for most of the next century. The college developed its own independent community. It built a post office. Grocers set up businesses across from the campus, and college faculty and staff lived in 2-story brick homes built by the school. With the Texas Central Railroad running adjacent to campus, residents soon referred to their little community as College Station. But it took another 62 years for the city of College Station to be formally established. In the early years, the A&M College campus was a wild place. Utilities and electricity were other issues. Residents collected water in buckets and cisterns. As the student population grew, campus housing options became scarce. Until the turn of the century, virtually nothing was constructed off campus. Faculty and students were restricted to on-campus housing until 1920. Conditions were so meager that in 1899, the Texas legislature appropriated $104,000 for improvements. The funds allowed the school to create a sewage system, a steam heating plant, a new electrical plant, and even an ice plant, a vital commodity during the scorching Texas summers. The state grant lifted the college into the 20th century and set the groundwork for Texas's leading educational institution. An influx of new students led to such overcrowding that A&M's board of directors began considering off-campus housing alternatives by the end of World War I, and College Station expanded beyond campus for the first time. Like the rest of the nation, the early 1900s were a period of expansive growth. First, Bryan and A&M established a streetcar transportation line, and the college built an on-campus hotel. Next, land was reserved on the northern outskirts of campus for businesses to set up shop, and an area known as Northgate formed. Early attractions included a butcher, tailor, barber, photo gallery, and a shoe repair shop. As more Texas A&M faculty and staff moved off campus, a new obstacle emerged. No municipality existed to supply essential services, such as electricity, running water, and sewage. off-campus residents had to install septic tanks and were responsible for collecting trash and maintaining streets. For 2 decades, the college provided as many services as possible since most off-campus residents were tied to the school, but it soon became apparent that a proper government would be necessary to supply basic services and utilities. So, in the latter days of the Great Depression, a group of professors gathered to create a town to fulfill their community needs. In October of 1938, the city of College Station was formally established. Despite the move's finality, Bryan legally annexed as much of the nearby property it could just north of Northgate. In these formative years, the city of College Station was inextricably entangled with the college. City leaders were typically professors, and the first city council meeting was held in the administration building on campus. City meetings and operations were focused upon campus activities and the needs of A&M faculty and staff. Gradually, the city's absolute dependency on the university lessened. City council members moved the municipal offices off the campus to Northgate in 1939 and gradually established the city's own utility lines and services. The College Station Independent School District moved away from the campus in 1940, and by the end of the year, the city owned the utility distribution system within its limits. College Station's first mayor, John H. Biney, resigned after a severe car accident in 1940. His replacement, A&M track coach Colonel Frank G. Anderson, believed in a small, unintrusive government and rejected federal assistance during his tenure. Colonel Anderson responded to a resident's complaint by fixing the problems himself and was known to bravely face down mad dogs and polecats. When Anderson was called to serve in World War II, the fledgling city elected its third mayor, Ernest Langford, who served for 24 years. His leadership formed the groundwork for College Station as we know it today. Langford hired a city manager, the local government's first paid position. The city manager helped plot expansion and monitored city operations. Langford also formed the first citizen committees to help city officials with planning and major projects. The first bank was built in 1946, followed by the first city park in 1947. Following World War II, the first off-campus subdivision was also formed. College Park needed no realtor or sales team. Demand for housing was so high that homes and properties practically sold themselves. To support that demand, Langford secured full city ownership of electrical and sewage utility lines. Growth was relatively slow, but in 1951, after a city census marked the population as just over 5,000, Langford drafted a city charter that allowed the annexation of surrounding properties. While annexations were beneficial, the city government struggled to keep up with the growing demands for services and infrastructure. As a result, streets and utilities fell into disrepair, and significant debt piled up. By the late 1960s, a desperate need for more commercial development and light industry became apparent. In 1963, the state legislature renamed the college as Texas A&M University. Then, in 1965, the university became fully integrated, including women, and no longer required participation in the school's military component, the Corps of Cadets. A&M's enrollment almost tripled in the following decade, bringing vast new academic research and business opportunities and spawning a surge in employment options for residents not aligned with the university. Mayor David A. Anderson turned the city's focus from responding to operational issues to anticipating future needs. He applied for federal funding, and the town received its first grant in early 1966. The initial 5-year plan he submitted to the City Council encouraged the development of light industry to generate tax revenue, It also included a capital program for a fire department, a police station, a new city park, a cultural center, and an expanded sewage disposal plant. Voters approved a bond election that included a new city hall in 1969. Racial integration lagged in College Station following the Civil Rights Act of 1964. In 1966, the city's segregated school was destroyed by fire. While neither the cause nor possible culprits were found, the event forced the city's hand soon after Anderson took office. He responded by enforcing integration and created a special committee that included 9 Black leaders. Anderson later transformed the charred school into a community center that would become the Lincoln Recreational Center. A 1970 lawsuit challenged city officials' ability to be paid by the city while employed by the university. But by 1973, university professors and state officials could again run for city office. James B. Dick Harvey was elected the city's 5th mayor. Like Anderson, he had an eye on the future, but also recognized the value of making the city self-sufficient. College Station residents had always relied on Bryan for water and electricity, but they began looking for alternatives as rates increased. Amid many lawsuits, Bryan proposed merging the two cities, but College Station opted to pursue independent utilities. A new sewer line was constructed in Northgate in 1978, and by the early 1980s, College Station generated its own water supply. At last, College Station was self-reliant. The 1980s marked a transitional period as the City Council turned its attention to improving the community's quality of life while encouraging sustainable economic growth. Post Oak Mall and the College Station Civic Center were constructed in 1982. The city created its first tourist information center, and City Parkland doubled in acreage while its existing parks added tennis courts, baseball fields, playgrounds, and public facilities. The city also bought and constructed Central Park. Next came economic incentives to attract industry and spark development. Bond elections had generated city revenue for decades, but were temporary solutions. At this point, the city needed an influx of industrial businesses to supply adequate tax dollars. Many residents reluctantly accepted this shift in direction. In 1980, the Westinghouse Electric Corporation, a Fortune 500 company, became the first major industrial corporation to come to College Station when it created a manufacturing site on 54 acres along State Highway 6. The announcement spurred a significant increase in industrial development, including another high-profile company, Reynolds & Reynolds. By the end of the 1990s, the Texas A&M University system encompassed 10 universities across the state. The university also succeeded in commercializing research, leading to the development of the BioCorridor area. Years later, biotechnology firms such as Fujifilm Diosynth Biotechnologies were mass manufacturing vital COVID-19 vaccines. As A&M expanded, the city began a remarkable shift from attracting residents, businesses, and corporations to enticing tourists. The effort reached its apex when President George H.W. Bush was persuaded to build his presidential library in College Station. Bush was not a native Texan, but was invited to speak at the 1989 graduation ceremony at A&M's G. Raleigh White Coliseum. The experience had a lasting impact on Bush, and in 1991, he decided to build his library on the west side of the campus. The library and museum opened in November of 1997. By the end of the year, more than 67,000 visitors had viewed the artifact displays, digital interactive exhibits, and replicas of White House rooms such as the Oval Office. The first full year attracted 252,039 guests. The library's success showed that tourism could be a significant source of revenue for businesses and the municipal government, and the city committed the resources to make it happen. Wolf Pen Creek Amphitheater was constructed in 1994, and the city purchased Veterans Park the following year. The park eventually became Veterans Park and Athletic Complex and remains the cornerstone of the city's dynamic sports tourism industry, attracting thousands of participants for youth and adult sports tournaments. Veterans Park is also home to a vast collection of memorials honoring those who served in our nation's wars. The Memorial Walk includes metal art formed with the World Trade Center wreckage from the 9/11 attacks. Meanwhile, the Northgate Entertainment District began incorporating high-rise buildings and apartment complexes to help mitigate property taxes. Subdivisions in Southern College Station also continued to expand, and the migration of residential neighborhoods outward caused the city to incorporate more lands to the south, east, and west. Substantial investments in the hospitality and tourism industries paid off in 2011 when A&M transitioned from the Big 12 Conference to the mighty Southeastern Conference. The historic move led to the construction of one of the nation's largest football stadiums on campus and a surge in out-of-town visitors during home game weekends. In the early 1990s, typical home crowds were around 70,000. These days, attendance on a typical game day reaches more than 100,000 enthusiastic fans. College Station's expansive growth continues with no end in sight. The Brazos Valley's prime location in the famed Texas Triangle has made College Station a preferred spot for new businesses, manufacturing, and high-tech industry, not to mention people seeking the amenities of an urban lifestyle coupled with a slower pace of country living. Single-family home construction and sales are at an all-time high, and the city's expansion rate is double the national average. Multiple business parks and community centers are under construction, including the Midtown development between Rock Prairie Road and William D. Fitch Parkway, along with a new city hall that features an outdoor plaza for public events and gatherings. While the Texas Department of Transportation has plans to expand State Highway 6 by 2023, the city is working to bolster broadband internet access, enhance mobility and transportation, and make public services and parks more accessible for everyone. A perfect example is the inclusive fun-for-all playground at Stephen C. Beachy Central Park. With significant investments in tourism and hospitality and signature events such as Christmas in College Station, the city is transforming itself from a small college town into a cultural and contemporary destination. What began in 1871 as a plot of land contracted for a land-grant educational institution evolved into creating an important new city that would become a staple of the Texas landscape and culture. College Station, home of Texas A&M University and the heart of Aggieland.